happy 2/22/22, everyone. I mean, it's one of those things, happens every once in a while. And for those purists out there, I understand it's not actually that it's 02/22/2022, but we're going to have fun anyway. So Kenneth Lang here with Cathy McCaferty Smith. And we met for the first time on one of Brenda Meller's events. And like anything else, we have stayed in touch throughout the last year or so. And it's been an amazing, conversation. And we'll talk numbers in a little while because Cathy mentioned she was in banking before, and kind of cool with that. We're going to be talking about discovering your unique purpose leadership fund. And what I noticed from you, Cathy, is actually you told me before you're actually a kitchen career coach.
Kitchen table
coach. So what does that actually mean?
It means that it's a comfy place for me and it's a comfy place for you, and we can have our coffee and we don't have to make it so official.
Right.
Even though it is.
So right off the bat, I see our mutual friend Terry is here. Terry Seaman is here. And you actually told me before that I guess you had had a conversation. So one of the things which really intrigued me was when you talked about something before. It was like, hello. It was, and I'm actually going to have to read with my glasses now.
That's okay.
It was hello, stay, interview, goodbye. Talent loss, I believe, was the terminology. And I was very interested in what the terminology meant, because a lot of times we talk about interviews for exit interviews and all that stuff. So what does that actually mean?
Stay interviews is a periodic conversation between a leader and an employee, and it's one-to-one. And it's basically, why do you stay here? What charges your batteries? What do you enjoy doing? Is there anything else that we could offer you so that you learned or you got more experience in something? Or would you like to job shadow? I mean, there's a zillion different things you could offer, but it's basically, why are you staying here? We want to keep you. You're valuable, as opposed to, oh, see ya as you leave in the next interview where you told us all the bad stuff and we can't do anything about it. So the book is by Beverly Kay, a heroine of mine from career development from when I was a very young person. And she and I are trying to partner to do some things with my book, because I have Career Map, Discover Your Unique Purpose. A lot of people I'm finding this year or these years in COVID are having a problem with blind spots. And it surprises me because they're not negative, they're positive. They don't realize what they have. And so they're not asking for things even on the job, or when they're not on the job anymore, they're sometimes not going deep enough to know what they have to offer and what charges their batteries that they would want in their next job. So it kind of fits both sides. In a job or out of the job, it helps you think about it.
So I think it's so important that people understand they have a little bit more control over their situations. I remember years ago, 15 years ago, I had what was called one of those performance improvement plans.
Yeah.
Kind of set you up, and it's almost a paper trail at times. And they don't always ask during what things are going. It's almost like a check-in. How are things going? What can I do to help and support you? It's almost like they don't focus on that so much when you're working with people, whether it's individuals or a group, because sometimes you really want to think about before things get out of hand. Maybe this is something that really is a minor thing. We don't want to make it a major thing.
Well, I don't even like to say this out loud because it's not always a positive label, but I'm an HR person twice. But I'm a proactive influence type leader rather than a like PIP, let's do the paperwork stuff. Because I agree with you, interventions before it gets bad. If you have a problem with somebody, you should just talk to them about it. These forms that we have scare people, and it doesn't help the engagement factor. And that's what's going on in the first place if something's going wrong.
So I'm curious, who else is here on the call? I mean, I'd love to continue the conversation. Do you know Joan, by the way, Joan Helwig?
Yes, I do. She's one of my students.
Is it okay if we add her to the stream?
Absolutely. She's amazing.
Hi, Joan. I didn't realize who you were for a little while, so I had to kind of ask. No, because it was Cathy. It's like, so welcome to the stream.
Yeah, I'm one of those people that just kind of pops up.
So how do you know Cathy?
Cathy was my instructor for my career development facilitator training.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually how we met, I think.
Yep. And she was one of my star players. She's one of the best of the best.
Where do you hail from?
I am I'm a school counselor in Marlette, Michigan.
Okay. Is that what now? I'm from New Jersey, so I don't have a big lay of the land for Michigan. So
In the
This is
thumb.
the Michigan map.
Am I
That's
going
what
the wrong way? This way? Whatever.
Yeah,
In the thumb.
I think on the camera. So we're down here.
so
Yeah.
We're from Michigan. This is the map we all use.
do you know? I'm sure you know Heather Linz.
I don't know Heather.
I do.
You
Okay.
do. So I think so. Cathy was telling me it before with numbers. You had something with 777 or something, or
Me?
Yep. No, we were talking ahead of time. I don't know if we ever talked about this in class, but seven and eight combinations always happen after I make a decision. It's on the check, it's on the paperwork, it's on something. And I started seeing seven patterns everywhere. And then eventually I realized I've had 7 jobs and 7 people have helped me to get each of those jobs. So I don't know if we got a lucky number, but if I get 777s, I know something's going really good.
I mean, I have a lucky number too, and the lucky number actually, because again playing lotteries and things which I don't go into gambling too much, but I've my favorite 2 numbers are 26 and 28 because those are the days that my kids were born. So and it's ironic because I was born on the 27th, different year obviously, so it's like 26, 27, 28, and it's funny because we don't forget the numbers that way. And even today, I woke up, which is true. I woke up 20 after 2 this morning because I wanted to see what it was like at 2:22:22 on February 22nd.
Yeah.
Well, for what it's worth, for future reference, there used to be something called a traveler's check. You guys are probably old enough to remember those. And the fee for them at the bank was $333. And I'm telling you, at least 3 times, because I was tempted to play the number on a Friday when I got paid on the lottery. 3 times on a Friday, 333 came out, and I didn't play it. So I could have been a millionaire. But
oh, bummer.
foray into like triple numbers. So there's also another one that fascinates me, and I'm a faith-based person, Ken. I know you are too.
Right.
I was getting ready to fire myself from my job. I had not so good of a manager and that kind of stuff. I kept getting 888s on the back of license plates. And it was sort of like, a confirmation from the divine. I got 888 the first time. And if you think about 888, you will see that when a gas pump resets, or when you step on a scale, same thing. If it's digital, it usually resets to 888 or 8888. So I kept getting these 888s. I got an 888 on a license plate. Then the next license plate on my way home was 888. And then a Roman numeral 8 or Roman numeral 8 was on there. And the pattern kept repeating. So I finally gave up and I quit my job. And then other opportunities came. So sometimes I use them as signposts too. It's like I'm trying to get your attention and reset you.
Those are good things. I never thought of numbers like this, you guys.
See, there you go. Yeah. Well, and if you think about it, 222. If you times it by 4, we got 888. So who knows?
Right.
Yeah.
So what do you find going on in the job market these days? Anything specific when you're working with your clients?
Yes. Are you talking to me or are you talking to
anyone who wants to answer? Anyone who wants to answer.
Well, I'm interested in the clients Joan deals with because she's in the high school level, and I'm curious as to what career development is going on for them and some of their counterparts.
It's hard right now because I think a lot of kids are not looking at college as one of their, well, let me backtrack because I talk about college as any post-secondary education or training after high school. And I have a pocket of them that just aren't, whatever pandemic is done, they're not thinking, I'm not going anywhere. I don't know. It's frustrating right now. And to be honest with you, we do not do enough career development with our students. I mean, I have said that, Cathy, since that's why I'm doing what that's why I have this desire to do something else, because we're not hitting it in public education.
Well, and for your edification, Ken, I used to do business and education partnerships. I worked in education as a educational consultant through a government entity.
Right.
And one of the things we do with business in our area is try to connect them to our high schoolers and to our college kids, because the next job that they get should fit them, because otherwise we compound the problem of disengagement. So it rolls back up, even if you're not employed when you're out of high school and you're in between college. And some of our groups will volunteer. I do a volunteer ministry at our campus, and I do some leadership development. In fact, the book was partially launched at a university campus, and now I've got senior executives using it. So I've got the spectrum of what we're trying to get to pull people together. So we believe that Joan and I both believe in partnerships with business, because they're your future employees. If you invest in them early and younger, you can mold them in a different way than, waiting until later on and not getting involved. So
definitely. So who else is on the call? Actually, while you guys were talking, I did what I always do, which I go check the other places, and I saw a couple of people said they couldn't get in. So we'll see. I mean, that's one of the challenges of doing a LinkedIn Live is, Cathy and I were kind of joking about it before. At the last minute, we were talking about, let's make sure we have a backup plan. And I always tell the story also that I was on a LinkedIn Live, and 10 minutes to 1, StreamYard went down. It actually went down. And it was one of those days that everything went down. And so if you talk about dealing with stuff, this is what this is all about. And now I see, I must have helped, because I see Christine Dykeman here. Start in middle school and sell the parents first. And that's absolutely true when it comes to that. I think, because I actually mentor college students as part of what I do. And what I find especially is a lot of students that are in college are the first generation in school, in the country or whatever. And so they don't have the knowledge at home, and they don't really have the support.
Yeah.
So it's important for all of us to do what we can. And you can't make assumptions. You can't make assumptions on what they do and don't know. I find it, in some ways, the ones that are getting out of school have a different type of discrimination against them compared to people of my age, because everyone there wants someone who has experience, and they don't have experience. So kind of makes you wonder. And then people of our age, it's the opposite. They want someone with less experience. So I think you can probably both speak to that from different places.
Well, I used to serve as an internship coordinator for the HR development side of HR, not the management side of it. So these were trainers, and we had local businesses involved with it. We got our alumni involved with it that had graduated from the program, and we started creating a kind of a consortium to let them practice, because if you don't practice, you don't have experience. You don't get experience, you can't get hired. It's kind of a vicious circle. But some of the work that Joan and I do in career development with our CDF background is to actually, if we could hook parents together and get them in a single place and talk to them, we could save them a whole bunch of tuition money, because here's what I call it. The 6-year college degree is what we've got today, because they flounder for 2 years not knowing what they want to do. And they struggle. I've had 3 or 4 of my career ministry young people change their majors 3 times. And most of the time the changes is the end of sophomore year. So you're resetting and starting all over again. We would love to get parents involved with us to teach them how to do career development conversations, just like we do with leaders doing stay interview conversations. It's like, what charges your batteries? What would you really like to do? you got a passion inside and it's burning in you, whether it's a job or whether it's just a talent like creativity, or you like to fix things, or you like hands-on kinds of stuff. But we're not getting, I think parents still have an idea that like people that work in building cars still work in a messy, dirty factory, and they don't. So there's a lot of changes that have happened, and parents are the number one influence on a kid's choice in a career. We get them in school and we can't get to the parents the way we'd like to. And thank God for people like you that are volunteering and that kind of stuff. So the business side gets connected to the kid side.
Well, I got to be honest about it. I started volunteering because I was out of work when I started doing this many years ago. So I thought, you know what? I lost my job. I was not in a great place, but I still have skills and I want to share them. But ulterior motive, I figured, let me network with the other people there that are mentors, because you never know where that's going to go. And I made some really good friends that way. And I think people who are starting out don't realize that they have so many connections. You think about when my kids were in athletics, we would go to different games, and the moms and pops there were working. I mean, they had jobs, and they could be great resources. And go to high school too. When I was at the PTO, you build those relationships, and I think there's nothing wrong with asking for that advice. I mean, and you have that initial conversation. I'm wondering, Joan, how many students that you work with, I mean, are on LinkedIn or actually are aware of?
Well, that's one of the things I brought it up before, and I actually have it. I have built a Google Classroom for our seniors where it's my place where I can keep feeding the portal so they have access to it. And that's one of the things. It's like we need to do that transition from, I don't want to say high school to post-secondary, because they really need to get that established. They don't know about it.
All right. Alex has a question, and this is going to be a hypothetical question. A 24-year-old family member graduating with a master's in mechanical engineering does not know which direction to pursue. Is it renewable energy? Is it HVAC? Is it atomic energy? Where would that person be able to get some good advice?
Well, they should have started out, first of all, at their university.
Okay. But even now, let's say, I mean, do you point them to networking groups? Do you have a list of people or places that they can go?
Well, and I would attack it from the within your heart point of view. I mean, I know that you need resources and information about what those things mean, but most of the time, even young ones gravitate towards something because it charges their battery, so to speak. And I look for those like, do you like to work with your hands? I have a facilities manager husband who can fix anything, build anything, fix anything, electrical, mechanical. But what he likes to do, he has a builder's license. He likes to build because it's cleaner than all the other messy stuff. Does he do the other stuff? Yes. So if you can narrow down what draws you most. I have a son who's a software programmer, and he went to be an engineer, but he likes coding. So if you can land on that single thing that charges your battery, so to speak, you can build on it and decide. But I also believe we talk about in schools sort of doing informational interviews. So I'm calling Ken and I'm saying, Ken, you did this for a living. What charged your batteries about it? What did you like? What didn't you like? What advice would you give me if I didn't like this or I like that? And where could I find more information? So we put people together with business people to do that kind of thing. And in the university level, I used to do that with my alumni who graduated from the same program I was doing the internships with, so that we could do a match.
And this is a very good point,
because get involved to help kids to understand what it's really like in that environment, the better it is for everybody, because then they don't do 6-year degrees.
And I can speak to this from my son who's in high school. Guidance counselors have to take a much more active role. And maybe it's a numbers game. Maybe they don't have the time to do it. But in some cases, I know that, again, the kids that are like the more intelligent can figure it out perceptionally, they're not given the same amount in some cases as the others who need the help. And yes, it's a numbers game, but I think there has to be a better way to make it work. And I'm not really sure what the total answer is. I know when you're in college, you can go to LinkedIn alumni groups and see if there's people there. You can reach out to your network, but I think it has to start in high school. You know, a lot.
Well, even before that, Ken, we have to back this up. The bus has got to back up. You know, in Michigan anyway, we had the career development is supposed to be K-12.
Okay.
The earlier you can start exposing kids to that career talk, it's no longer asking kids what they wanted, you know, what do they want to be? That question's gone out the window. It's just, we need to expose them, because I can tell you from years of experience that we have great tools to use to help kids explore careers and that, but we don't take the time to sit down and dialogue with them about what all that means. But they always they gravitate to the ones that they've heard of before and completely overlook careers that might be on their list that they've never heard of. And that's where that family piece comes in. If the family's never heard of it, then they're not going to support their kids. So it's a vicious cycle. And that's the part that bothers me, is we are not, I mean, I get all this. Yeah, we all have huge caseloads. We have little time, but it has to be, it can't just be us counselors. It has to be that village. It takes a whole village to raise, you know, every one of my core teachers could be exploring careers with kids just to start planting that seed. Because our kids don't know. You don't know what you don't know.
So then, and this is for both of you. I'm an introvert myself, and I know for many times I didn't ask for the help, but how would you approach someone who doesn't seek out the help? How do you reach an introvert?
Well, my whole thing, and again, I've worked in public education for 30 plus years. I have to find my champions on our staff, and we need to integrate a lot of this into curriculum so that it becomes part of that dialogue, because you're right. The kids that come in and seek me out aren't my first gens. They don't know what they're doing. I have to go find them. And I survey my kids early on to find out who my first gens are, because they need hand holding.
Let me jump in on I'm a county-wide consultant in the past, and I'm an HR person, so let me combine them both. I appreciate what schools are trying to do, and they introduce it, but the number one person who has the most influence on a child's selection and a job is their parent. And so at the ISD level, we call them intermediate school districts. They're consulting business to the local school districts to help train them. So I used to teach educators. I used to do parent nights at high schools, or I do things at the campus and do some things with have you considered? Because if they don't ever hear the options, they can't take it back to mom and dad. And if parents don't hear us, they don't know what to tell the kids. So the common denominator is parents, what are your ambitions for your child? Because you have them. Sometimes those ambitions don't match what they want. That happens sometimes. And sometimes you have parents that are, you know, mine was a programmer. My son, when he was 16, he was playing with the computer. We used to help him. We encouraged him in what he wanted to do, but no way did I ever want to be any part of that. But it was something that he's a fantastic software programmer for a very large simulation company. So I think we have to listen to our kids better, but I think we as educators and as business people need to educate parents on how to have that conversation.
And that's a good point, because everyone talks about career nights and you bring the people to school for the kids, but it would be great if there was a parents' career night, because I don't think most parents really understand what a lot of people do. And it's not because they don't, it's just impossible to. I mean, so I think and it's a delicate balance, because you don't want to talk down to parents or be negative, but they have to have a better understanding as to what's actually out there now, because it's a lot different than it was 20 or 30 years ago.
Oh, definitely.
The thinking process is, did you know? because you might not. So when I do parent nights like that, I drive principals crazy because they like to control the parent thing. That's another thing in school, it just happens. But when we can get leaders like that to help support that in the particular curriculum we have 3 curriculums in the state of Michigan: general ed, special ed, and then there's something called career focused ed or career technical ed.
Yeah.
And I lived in the technical ed side, and we had a council, 51% business and 49% educators. And a lot of those were parents. So one of the roles that I used to play in an initiative called School to Work is I met a lot of senior execs and a lot of leaders in business that were married to teachers. That's the other way you get through the door. Because when you can get those both sitting at the table, we can have those conversations with parents in a different way. But it's a big job because there's a lot of choices.
Yeah.
And this kind of speaks to my point too. If they don't have, parents don't have the knowledge to professionally guide their children. So let's say if someone wants to hire someone, they talk a lot about, here's the college counselors. You go to the person, you pay them X amount of dollars to go through the colleges with them. They're the college counselors. They do what guidance counselors can't do, but they have that one-on-one. Are there types of counselors out there or places or resources that someone can go to for someone who's in high school? Or are there online things? Because I don't see a lot of them, but I know there's a need. I think with a broad stroke, it's like, here's the person I'll recommend the colleges. Here's the one who will do the tutoring for the ACTs and the SATs. But that's only a small part of it.
Well, Dawn and I both do this because we love it, not because we have to, because we have some passion about helping people find their unique purpose. So there are school people. I'm talking to one right now that I'm looking at, trying to convince her to do some parent work when she retires, because she's been thinking about retiring forever. But I work at the local campus, and I try to get the kids up to freshman level. I mean, I work with other kids, but sometimes it's the availability and whether you're allowed to do it, because parents' trust is hard to win unless you're connected to something they trust.
Right.
And I don't blame them. I don't want my kid talking to somebody that I don't want them to talk to either. So it's a challenge, but we have bridges, I guess. In our community, we do what we can, and some of the ISDs are involved with that. Business people are on councils, but there's no one perfect silver bullet. And in the advocacy for what Joan does, counselors are taxed with so many behavioral things and habit things and suicide things and a lot of those other things.
Administrative.
And they're not, fundamentally, the school counselor is not the career counselor. And most of them aren't trained. Because she came to my class, we focused on career development for counselors and for coaches. There are, I think in our mix of things, you've heard of what CDF is. That's the career development facilitator.
Yes.
A lot of people will elect to do that. They don't have to do that. And it's all over the country. The National Career Development Association is really big in helping education to help get that message out to the educators, but we got to get to our parents, and there's not a real good device to do that at this point.
And that's, parents are very protective of their kids.
Absolutely, and they should be.
No, absolutely, and I'm not disagreeing either. And kids now, I talk about kids who are in their teens, 20s, even 30s. They've grown up in a different world than us. I mean, we all joke amongst ourselves about, pre-cell phones, pre-this and pre-that. Now you can look stuff up. You don't have to do it the same way. And that's the little bit of the disconnect. I mean, there's almost a fear of you're losing control as a parent, and you have to trust the process.
That's where I think that it sounds old-fashioned, but like the stay interview with your employee, if you have people that you know in your realm of, whether it's your religious organization, whether it's in your neighborhood, get them to have like a bit of a script. How did you decide to do your job? What kind of things do you like best about your job? What would you recommend to a young person that wanted to get into that kind of thing? Or no, I hate that. I would never want any part of it. We don't do enough of those one-to-ones. And in fact, I'll give you an example of something I miss, and I think this is a connector, and I don't know how to make it happen. Our church every year used to have a cleaning day, where we used to clean the windows and do all the floors and all that. And every generation was there, and we had a picnic afterwards. And I remember vividly an older white-haired gentleman that I respected a lot chasing my son with a broom. And we don't have that connection anymore where we're having fun with each other. COVID's causing a lot of this lack. But if we could find virtual ways to have these kinds of conversations between business, parents, and kids, I mean, we script this kind of stuff from time to time. We can do it, but we don't have a system to do it. We do it in pockets.
Well, I think the other issue is from an educational standpoint, you have 50 states with 50 different types of standards and different types of populations. And so to try to do it at that level is going to be challenging as an understatement. So I think it has to be a national thing. Again, it's because it's not predetermined by your location. A lot of the needs are similar in terms of building out the relationships, I believe.
We had a private system while I was still in education, that ACT folks and some of the Strength Finder folks were behind. And it was nationwide. We were doing work-ready communities in different states. And there was some standards, and Joan, you know what I'm about to say. It's about every 3 years, and educators throw it all out and start all over again.
Yeah.
And we never have any continuity. In fact, one of the best projects that I ever had is we did student-led parent-teacher conferences. Mm-hmm. Instead of the teacher and the parent just, sitting, the kid was in charge and had to do a presentation and explain what they really liked and which direction they were thinking about going, 2 or 3, because in education, we try to give them three different choices rather than one, so that they can experiment and play. And we have systems that let them look at videos of people who actually do the job, that kind of thing. But the interesting thing was the student-led conference that they demonstrated for me, because I was working with our special ed, was an autistic child who was highly functioning, but he did job shadowing in libraries and on farms because that's what he liked, and he wanted to see what he liked best, and he presented on it to us as educators back at the ranch. And so I know if we can get autistic children interested in doing that, we should get lots of children interested in that. But parents are the audience of that with the teacher. Then you at least bring them together so they can have a conversation around that particular child.
So Ken, how do we do this parent thing? Because I'm game. We need it.
Okay. Well,
let me jump in for 1 second.
Yeah.
The reason I love Joan so much, because she gave me a piece of work that she did when she was in my class that scared the crap out of me. The highest dropout rate, according to Joan at that time, was 9th grade. I always thought 11th grade would be the end of 11th grade. I'm sick of this. But there's no transfer between middle school and high school that's really safe or really effective. I'm sure that's still the case. That's one of the others. So depending on the age of the child you had, I wanted to throw that in, because that 9th grade thing scared me to death. Because I think of all the people in my inner city walking the streets, and if they can't get a job, they're going to rob you. That's what it comes down to.
Well, and I think what the 9th grade thing, we can predict our kids who aren't successful in 9th grade, because that is transition from middle or junior high to high school. Those kids, those at-risk 9th graders, are on the road to not graduate. I mean, it's a given. They're truly our at-risk kids. And you're right, Cathy, they have no connections to anything. They have no goals.
I mean, I think honestly, a lot of it has to start with, we make assumptions. I think there's a lot of people don't even have good internet in this country.
Yeah.
So we make a certain assumptions that everyone has the same access to things.
They don't.
And they don't.
No.
So you could say here's a YouTube thing, or here's an online curriculum, but if you can't access it and you don't have good technology or backing there, or cell phone service, that's almost the first place it has to start, honestly. I mean, if you ask them, you have to make sure everyone is on a level playing field.
Yeah.
Although before Facebook, there was something called MySpace. I don't know if you remember that, any of you. And I used to ask the kids that I used to teach their teachers, because we would do a joint thing from time to time, and I would ask them not if they had internet access. I asked them where they accessed their MySpace account, and they always had an answer of where they did that. So kids will find it somewhere. I mean, in this day and age, they can't not do it, but they might not do it legitimately. That's my concern.
Look, this could be done out of libraries very easily.
Absolutely.
It could be done out of a coffee shop or something. I mean, but whatever it is, I mean, you want to make sure that everyone has the same access to things as a starting point. And then what they do with it is something else, in my opinion.
Right.
Well, and I think that we can, what you and I do with the adults that are not working at this point are a good resource to that, because they can talk to their kids about the struggles that they're going through and how they're trying to choose their next job, because it's kind of fashionable right now to be out of work, either by your choice or not your choice. And I think that when parents have real conversations on that, I think the reality is more precious, I guess, because it's coming from within your own family rather than the school that's kind of distant.
I also think that the kids getting out of school now have a different expectation about careers. You know, when we all got out of school, we kind of thought we'd be at a place for 5, 10, 15 years. But kids now, they're more in, I'm going to be here for a year, here for 2 years, and move around, because that's just what they see. So that's a much different understanding.
But back to our earlier conversation, stay interviews can prevent that second year I'm leaving. Because if you keep building on something and teaching the person something and giving them an opportunity to try new things, they will usually stay put. It's the staleness of I want to do more, or I'm creative, I got a lot of energy, I'm younger, I want to try stuff. And you get into a rigid job with a rigid boss and they leave you. So they're learning too. So we have a role with leaders to play too, to help them to understand how you engage a young person that's going to leave in 2 years, and maybe they still will. But if you invest in them, they might tell you about a friend that could replace them too. We teach them networking that way too.
Well, that's why even I push this with people in my career groups of 45 and older. You're a mentor. If you're out of work, you're still a mentor. You have the skills. You can share your knowledge, because not everything is technical in the workplace. Sometimes it's the little things, and even the way that everyone communicates now. I mean, think about it. When you're in the workplace now, you're messaging and texting and you're emailing. And I've said more times than not to kids, go to someone's desk, ask them a question, pick up the phone. We would call it old school, but I would look at it, it's just different. I mean, don't hide behind the technology.
Mm-hmm.
And they do.
When the rubber meets the road, and I'll give you an example. I teach for an organization called Mish Biz Ignite, and we have young leaders that are in their late 20s, early 30s. I have a generational love for that group. And we were teaching some crucial conversation type things. I used to teach crucial conversations. And one of the young men told us on the other side, because they had to do a plan and then do something with it and then come back and talk about it as a learning group and get coaching from each other as well as us. Well, this young man had to fire somebody, and he had never done that before. And he came back glowing and all smiles, and he said, I just want to tell you how thankful I am for the two of you as trainers, because we gave him the tools the week before on how you approach the conversation, how you take the steps to do it. And he said the guy actually shook his hand and gave him a hug when he left, because he really didn't like the job, but he got let go in such a way that they were still friends. He said, I don't know what I would have done without you guys. I think that when we put them in situations where they actually have to work with people and talk to them in face-to-face land, or even virtually, some of them aren't equipped, and so they really want us then. And that's our door in. When they got a problem that's too big to solve, that's when we should be there ready to do some mentoring, and that's where some of the people in the community can help too. How do you fire somebody? I mean, you probably get 3 different versions of it if you have
even to some extent, like when you're working with someone in job search and you have a partner, someone, you have to have an accountability partner. You have to have someone who's going to basically say, not just I support you, but, did you think about trying to do something different? Or what have you done this week? Or what are you doing next week? And why aren't you doing it? and there's different levels of that.
So the biggest thing that you just said, which would be golden to every parent, teacher, business person, is ask open questions.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you ask open questions, you get the kind of information where you can solve that person's problem. But we tell them, we always say in our trainings in leadership, if you ask, they'll assist. If you tell, they resist.
That's good.
That's very good. I was thinking today, what do teachers have all different challenges now between COVID and trying to coordinate stuff online. I mean, they've had more technical challenges. I don't know how they've been able to do it. My wife's a teacher too. And everyone, in some ways, it's all well and good to say they mean well, but sometimes you just have to acknowledge that what's working isn't working and you have to try to fix it. And I don't know the best way to do it. I want to keep doing it because I think it makes everyone better, for it.
Well, and in a way, your work with the job seeker is not much different than the person that's leaving high school or college and has to go into something they've never done before. The fear is the biggest piece. One of the reasons why I have a master's degree in career development counseling, but I focused a lot of my energy on learning about grief. Because when you lose something, there's a certain snap that goes on in your mind and in your heart. And for a while, you're not functioning totally. And then you're trying to make a decision to do that next thing that you have to do because you have to have a job. And there's a lot of gap in there for either age. Any big transition that you make from one thing to another creates a sense of grief in the middle. And not everybody knows how to cope and plan for that either. And you're up and down. One day you're happy, the next day you're madder than daylights again. Then you're frustrated. Then you're sad. Managing those emotions while you're doing that is not the best way to put your best foot forward when you're trying to get a job. You have to try to figure out how to manage that and keep it at bay. Because here's what I worry about with people that have been let go, maybe, and even when you choose yourself, because you still go through a certain amount of grief. We hire in HR for energy, not just skills. And I likened it to dating. You don't marry everybody. You date a whole lot until you figure out the one you want. There's an energy that connects you and you make a connection emotionally, physically, whatever it is. And then you decide to get married. So that engagement in between, kind of like what we have in our workplaces, we don't focus as much on the engagement part because we're focusing on the grief part. And we can't get that energy going.
I also think there's a bit of, I don't know if it's envy or jealousy, but when someone gets a job or someone, especially out of college or someone else, or they had an interview, there's that fear, when is it going to be me? Or how come it's this person, not another? And it's human nature. And, I look at both groups as you're all a team. And if someone does get the job, go back and let everyone know what you did successfully so they can learn and benefit from it. It's not just, I've gotten a job, see ya sort of thing. But this has been a very good.
The coolest fun story I have about a young person, but it could be an older person too, was a young man sent me a package, and I didn't know what it was. I'm in school, so we think bombs and things like that. We were a little scared for a bit. But inside of it, he sent a little boy's dress shoe. And in it was a note that said, I'm just trying to get my foot in the door. And I thought it was the most creative thing that I've ever seen as an HR person. And I couldn't hire him because I didn't have a job, but we kept a radar out for that young man for a long time until he did get something, because he was so creative and he was willing to stand out. And I think that's what's necessary when it is a little bit of a competition if two people in the same group are going after the same job, but that's not very often. So helping each other be creative for an industry and being a sounding board for someone else, an accountability partner, as you said, Ken, is really important, especially if they're in the same boat, because they understand the same emotions.
And even doing role-playing interviews, have one person being the hiring manager, the other one being the applicant, and having that list of questions that everyone has, the ones that they get, where do you see yourself in 5 years, or tell me about yourself, and all those things. It's good practice.
Can I give you my silver bullet question? that works every time.
Yep.
And this is for job seekers so that you can get control of the interview away from us, HR people. This is what I put on every last sheet I've ever interviewed anybody in. But I'm going to teach you how you can do it as a job seeker and not be the HR person. My question is, we ask you a lot of questions, but we might have missed something. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us related to the job? And most of them will either pass or fail on that question when I'm doing the question. But here's what you can do as a job seeker. You can say, because they're going to ask you, do you have any questions? You say, before I ask my questions, there's some other things that I can offer related to the job that you didn't ask me. May I tell you? You take control of the interview, and then you get the good stuff at the end. And you also get the good stuff at the end because you've been listening to every question I've asked you. So you kind of have a feel now for what I'm looking for. It's like the cherry on top.
That's really great advice.
Because I don't know how many times I've done an interview and I went back and sat in my car and went, my God, why didn't I tell them that? I didn't even think of it.
I would also say that when you do a follow-up, thank you, whether it's anything else, mention in there as a refresher the things you may have forgotten about, or just to kind of put yourself, front of mind again, by the way, or just to, because it happens to all of us. You have a conversation with someone, you go on an interview, you do something, and you leave the room. It's like, why didn't I say this? And stuff actually happens. So that's where the follow-up comes, whether it's a LinkedIn connection request or a thank you, whatever it is. It's another opportunity.
I'm old-fashioned. I like cards. I just had this conversation with somebody. I got in my car after I did an interview, sit there for a minute, the stuff would come to you, and I would put it in the thank you card back to them. But here's the really scary part. And this was before technology. I did thousands of interviews. I got 5 thank you notes in all of those thousands of interviews. And I can't tell you how frustrating it was, not because I needed the thank you, but because you had the opportunity to say one more thing to me that might have tipped my decision, and you didn't do it.
Absolutely. So go ahead. You guys have any other closing thoughts before we wrap up, Cathy or Joan?
Joan, I'll let you go first because I know you have passions.
I think there are lots of opportunities. I just don't know exactly what they are. But I think the parent piece is critical. And, I was thinking here, like, how the lunch and learn used to be a thing where you would even go to the workplace and be there just to have that casual conversation. But it gets back to that teaching piece of chunking out what's important to share with parents that doesn't take a lot of their time, because sometimes we have them only for a short period of time, and we have to get the best message out there in that short period of time. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, how could we put all these things that we would like to share with them, but chunk it out so that it happens at different times. And it's in every, like you said, every medium that we can think of to get it out there. I mean, I don't know but every parent, it's what I've said in school, every 9th grader, doesn't matter where they go to school, they need the same types of career information. Every 10th grader, every 7th grader. So it's like parents. We have to plant that seed younger, that we're here to prepare your student for the future. None of us know what the future looks like, but it is changing. The job market's changing. The opportunities are changing. So I think it's putting that together, because I agree totally. Parents are critical, and we tend to overlook that.
Well, and let me talk from the adult point of view, but it trickles down to the kids' point of view too. One of the things that I've noticed during COVID is what I call positive blind spots. People don't seem to understand what talent, skills, passions, energy. They're not in tune with it the way they have been in the past. Blind spots used to be something you did wrong and you didn't even know it, somebody had to tell you. One of the reasons why this book exists, and by the way, I do this with high schoolers, I think this is a great parent guide to have the kinds of questions. that what energizes you. I'll give you the first one, because this is my first story in the book is a 5-year-old experience with my mom in a PTA conference. My kindergarten teacher told my mom I would feel comfortable leaving Cathy in charge of the class when I left the room. I'm 5 years old. I'm a born teacher. It's those kinds of things that we need to notice and validate. So the first chapter in Career Map is, what have people told you that you're good at? It's a validated skill. And in that dreaded interview, when they have those people that ask that, tell me about yourself question, the way you fix it is, let me tell you about what other people have said about me. And if you kept that list, you've got a pre-reference check in front of the HR person, and your energy's going up and you're engaging and you're more likely to have the energy to get hired. Mm-hmm. So Career Map is for anyone that's old enough to read or old enough to retire, because we don't ask ourselves the questions, what have I got? What charges my batteries? What do I really want to do? It's my purpose. I need to do this. It's so important. And Ken, you're doing that with this kind of work that you're doing. So we need to teach other people. Maybe it's, you fix everybody's car. Or me, send me to the sewing circle because I love making quilts. I'll be in the middle of them. Or on here, if you're a parent, find me on LinkedIn. I'll talk to you. Jody probably would too. Mm-hmm. Like to help because we all need community. We don't have the answers all by ourselves.
Absolutely.
No. I wrote the book based on the class that Joan took, and it's been piloted in high school and in college, and senior execs are using it that are unemployed. So I figured it's simple enough for even an executive. So I don't mean that in a bad way, but it's simple enough to read and fast. But we want the information out there so that people can help their kids. And people can help their families. So find us on LinkedIn. Joan, are you on LinkedIn? I think you are. You're required to be.
Well, what I'll do is when this chat is finished, I'll put the LinkedIn URLs in the comments. And okay. Cathy, if you want to put a link to where the book is there too, that'll be good, because that way anyone ever watches this, whether it's now or recorded, they'll have the information there. So I want to thank you both very much for coming on 2/22/22. And I know lots of teachers are having a lot of fun with this today. I have no doubt about it. I saw all the different things that they could do to have fun with the day. So have a great day. Thanks a lot for attending, everyone. Okay. We'll see you again in March.
Thank you. Thanks, Ken. See you, Cathy.
Bye.